Gentlemen, welcome to the show, everybody. Sorry we're so late. Just getting our crap together, and it. I get the feeling that we're all kind of recovering from an extended Turkey Day hangover. I know Watcher's getting ready to freeze his ass off just for the show. So we I'm not sending
Fair.
prayers to you, my friend. I am sending like heat waves your way. Hopefully you can heat up through the internet. Guys, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking the Syrian kind of the kickoff, the reignition of the Syrian war and Trump's Mexican standoff here on the CFC episode 449. If you are first time here, this is the Future Conflict channel. My name is Scott, and I run a little show called the Council on Future Conflicts. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about, but first, let's intro our panel here. Joe, good to see you, brother.
Oh, you're talking to me?
I said, Joe, good to see you, brother.
I didn't get that part. You cut out on me.
Okay.
What? I'm pretty good. The lady Allison and I were invited to the court of the Duke of Montana last night. So we had dinner with the Duke, the Duchess, and the heir. It's always good to be part of something big. But in all honesty, we had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everyone else did. There's a lot to be said for the community that we have built here and what it's made in real life amongst all of the people getting out and doing things together. There's a lot of folks in our chat that are in 2 different Bible studies that the wife and I are running, and a lot of folks have come out and met each other in real life and made real connections. Like my favorite Aunt Wanda, who's probably watching today too. Good stuff. It's been a weird up and down week for me, and yesterday just really solidified keeping the fight, do what we got to do, and keep moving forward. So
yeah, it's important getting out there and meeting people and making those connections, and it's good to see that you're able to make some more connections at the court of the Duke of Montana. That's always a good thing, of course.
Yeah.
He very impressive conversation I know you had with the heir. It's always good when you meet kids that give you like hope in the future.
Yeah, let me tell you, for a young teen, he had an amazing grasp of UK politics and Canadian politics, and it was very refreshing. I mean, and one of the biggest problems I have with the younger generation right now is that they don't want to engage adults, right? They want to spend their time looking down at their phone. But we were all having a conversation, and he was like, "Let me just interrupt and get your guys' opinion on this," and just dove into the topic, and it was very refreshing to see. And I'm hoping that there are a lot more young folks like that. Squishy wants to know who we're talking about here. The son of the Duke of New York, or Duke of Montana. So
the Duke, the A number 1.
Yeah. Anyway,
there is a Duke of New York. It's Isaac Hayes. Yeah, just so you know, if you don't know the Duke of New York is.
That's a deep cut. Let me just say that the Duchess is an absolute gem of a woman and a fine cook. So good stuff.
All right, Watcher, how you doing, brother? I know you're fighting the chill this morning, right?
Yeah, it is cold as a fart in a dead Eskimo out here, Scott.
That's the new one. I'm writing that down right now.
Okay.
Doing good though. Cooked Cowboy Thanksgiving for everybody out here, and if you're questioning what Cowboy Thanksgiving involves, it's largely Thanksgiving that is mostly pre-done by Costco because we had to work the entire day. So whatever we could slip into the oven as we were having evening meeting and still have something decent. But it was pretty good. Pretty pleased with it and pleased with the company, and wish I could have been with my family, but out here doing important stuff.
You were. It was just a different family.
True.
Yeah, it's guys, the last couple days have been kind of interesting. We go into we start this week off, and I'm thinking, hey, we're probably going to have World War III by the weekend, maybe, and we still may have World War III by the end of the weekend. But with this whole rejiggering of what's going on in Syria, I mean, a lot of interesting stuff happened. One of the other things that's very interesting that's kicking off in the last 24 hours, we're going to talk about it in the odds and ends. We got the Tbilisi riots, which look very Euromaidan-esque to me.
like literally, you could superimpose the video and swap out the flags.
And and so it just a lot of weird, wild stuff happening. It's
almost like someone is turning up the dial just before Trump takes office.
Exactly. It's almost as if they're trying to stoke some sort of war, and it's kind of like they're literally throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks, right?
Hey, you know what? I just thought of something, and let me say this. I don't know if you're watching right now, but one of the show fans arranged for a box to be delivered here yesterday that had some Lou Malnati's pizza in it and Portillo's Italian beef sandwich kits in it. So you know who you are. You did well.
Somebody loves you, Joe. Nice.
Yeah. That's actually what it says right on the box. Somebody really likes you. So it was that's pretty legit. You got Saturday dinner covered in a couple more days down the road. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, Scott. So.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's you got some good. Some of our fans are so awesome, right? I mean,
they are. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump right into it, guys. I mean, we got a late start. Apologies for the late start. Honestly, we're a little discombobulated today, so we're gonna jump right into it. First up on the docket here, gentlemen, the West's anti-Russian provocation might be to destabilize and invade Belarus. So, Joe, we've got a destabilization going on in Syria. We've got a destabilization going on in Tbilisi. And now this says maybe they're going to try to destabilize Belarus.
Ironically, all places tied to Russia in one way or another.
Now, let's be honest. When you have an authoritarian government, there is, destabilization is actually a valid tool against that, and if you're a country that doesn't like said authoritarian rulers from the outside, it really makes sense, to do something like this, let the people rise up against the country versus say maybe, trying to take it from the outside. And in the case of Belarus, I mean, I'll have you remember, when the war kicked off against Ukraine, a good third of the offensive forces came through Belarus into Ukraine. So when you do that to Belarus, you're doing it to Putin and you're doing it to Russia. And let me just tell you, Russia wouldn't let it happen. Russia would step in and a lot of people would get killed if you tried to do some sort of a color revolution in Belarus. All right. Belarusian media reported last week about the West's alleged plot to destabilize and then invade their country. Existing information warfare campaigns are meant to facilitate the recruitment of more sleeper cell agents who will later stage a terrorist insurgency using Ukrainian procured arms. Mercenaries will then invade from the south, carry out drone strikes against strategic targets, and attempt to seize the capital. If they succeed, then the coup authorities will then request a conventional NATO military intervention. Let's see. This summer's Ukrainian invasion of Russia's Kursk region might also have emboldened the plotters. No nuclear retaliation following despite the threat that this NATO-backed attack posed to its territorial integrity. Likewise, they might calculate that neither Russia nor Belarus, which hosts the former's tactical nukes, would resort to these means if they replicated the scenario. That's interesting, Joe. Russia may see these threats. these Ukrainian and NATO threats to Russia as a reason to use nuclear weapons, but would they think the same way if they did it against Belarus?
Well, I think I'll go with the old school interpretation of this from Russia. Belarus is Russia in their
Right.
opinion. So the Union State's a thing. And so that the Union State would imply that, yes, they would, since they consider themselves linked in one place.
Yeah, it's almost like the Rus suffixes are something to watch out for. Weird.
Well, Belarus stands for White Russia, essentially. So
Yep.
it's not like it's right there in the name.
Yeah, it's a literal translation of the name, but that comes from the old Russian Revolution between the Reds and the Whites. But yes.
So kind of to answer the question that we were talking about earlier, Russia cannot afford to have its adversaries capture and hold Belarusian territory because of the national security threat that this represents, and because it would greatly undermine its negotiating position. Yeah. I mean, all the things that we just said, plus it makes Putin look bad, right? And so,
Yeah.
like I said, that's the reason he wouldn't let it happen. And if you don't think that he wouldn't be willing to kill a whole lot of people to keep this from happening, you know, I mean, you haven't been paying attention to what he's willing, the price he's willing to pay for the land he's taken in Ukraine. And it's terrible. The price the Russian people are paying for their gains in Ukraine is terrible. That said, they're still willing to pay it. And the country is mostly behind Putin still.
Yeah, and in fact, the Kursk operation by the Ukrainians has backfired in that regard. It did not lessen public support for Putin. It actually drove it through the roof. So,
yeah,
a bad idea.
He says here, there's a possibility that the West's attempt to destabilize and invade Belarus, whether through mercenaries and or conventional Ukrainian troops, such as a conventional NATO military intervention, isn't likely at this stage. If it's thwarted and then nothing else comes of the plot, then it's kind of like, essentially the whole thing's a push, and there's no gain, and it just makes Ukraine and the Western countries that support it look bad. And even if Trump says, no, we're not going to do this, and starts to pull back on some of these types of efforts, Ukraine could go rogue and, desperately just try to do this just in case they're worried the West might sell it out. That's an interesting, question, Joe. There's a lot of things that Zelensky may not like that could happen, as far as Trump's lack of support for the Ukrainian cause. What do you think? What are some of the kind of potential things that that Zelensky might try to do if as a kind of a desperation act, before the bell? It's maybe a Hail Mary play, something like that.
Well, I think his biggest Hail Mary play is to cause some sort of an incident that involves the death of a lot of Western contractors, whether they be Americans or British, preferably both. That would kind of try to force the hands of people to go all in on supporting Zelensky. It's really the only hope he has. I honestly think that the reason why we're seeing an uprising in Tbilisi is because the deep state in America knows that Zelensky is done. The Ukrainian war is over. It's just a matter of when they sign the paper. So they have to stir up something else.
Well, the interesting thing is I was kind of hinting towards we could still have World War III by the end of the weekend. Putin came out and said that, he said, listen, when we attacked Ukrainian targets last week, it was in response to the use of Western weapons against us. And so he has now further warned that the Russian military is actively monitoring the locations of Ukraine's long-range weapons to determine where they are and issues he's issued a fresh warning order for that. What is it? The Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missile. And he said that that these ballistic missile deployments would be necessary if Ukraine continues to attack on Russian territory, and that this time, instead of hitting like a military target in some random city, that he would target decision-making centers in Kiev, which is pretty interesting. Joe, it appears that those ballistic missiles that they shot had not just like conventional weapons, but literally no weapons in them. They were literally like empty MIRVs, right? I don't know if they were concrete or just metal or whatever, but they didn't even have bombs in them. If they were to put 2,000-pound bombs or whatever or something like that in those MIRVs, that would be a devastating weapon, especially if used against Zelensky's position or potentially other lawmakers or whatnot in Kiev.
Imagine if they used a thermal barrack, which is just one step short of a nuclear bomb at a 2,000-pound thermal barrack. Maybe they will, right, on the next strike. And I think that's what he was hinting at, right? So the first one was hey, man, you should probably stop this. And the next one will be, I done told you so. So I think you're right. But I think that the collective West, as I pointed out when the Oreshnik attack happened, that the collective West will not listen. We're going to continue to push and poke the bear, literally the bear, until they do something back that justifies the war they want. They've got a war, but it's not the war they want. So they're trying to push for that as much as they can.
Well, the interesting thing is when Putin described what he said that these missiles could turn targets into dust, and that the multiple launches of hypersonic weapons could be comparable to a nuclear strike. He described it can reach speeds of around 3 kilometers per second and unleash temperatures and energy like the surface of the sun upon impact. Interesting that he says that, and you mentioned thermal barracks, right?
Yeah, well, that sounds like what he's talking about. So
some sort of conventional munition that would be very devastating, and a thermal barrack falls into that category. A fuel air explosive, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Kiev is a heavily populated area, and that would be devastating to the people of Kiev if they can't, back off of that.
Yeah, I think if we're being really honest here, and I've said this many times, if Russia wanted Zelensky dead, they could have killed him. They could have flattened Kiev flat as a pancake with missile attacks until he died. That's the end of it. They had weapons that were in their arsenal that could have done it without going nuclear. They haven't.
Yesterday, I think Stan put out a tweet that said that the Oreshnik strike was proof that they have the capability to decapitate the Ukrainian government whenever they choose. They just haven't done so yet. So maybe the next move is exactly that.
Speaking of decapitations, things that are going when you have giant protests in the middle of a capital, invariably people within that protesting crowd are probably thinking decapitation of a government that I don't like. What you got here is so this is just a Twitter search on the keyword of Tbilisi. Some pretty amazing imagery from is it yesterday, Joe? Joe, you were
last
watching.
Night, yeah. Last night in Tbilisi, but yes.
Yeah, fill us in what was going on.
So there have been low-level protests for the last several weeks, but what this is pro-EU protesters and the government of Georgia saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that because that's one of the big, thick red lines with the conflict we've been having with Russia since 2008. and these people are trying to demand joining EU, which was something that Putin has said is it should never happen. EU and NATO. If you remember, the original 2008 invasion was because we offered membership in NATO to Georgia. And he decided, well, then I'll just have to invade in order to make that impossible. This is just a continuation of that. It really came to a head last night. I don't know what sparked these protests. I believe it was probably a visit by the angel of death, Victoria Nuland. But this right here is exactly the way that it went in Ukraine in February of 2014. Weeks of low-level protests followed by one massive weekend of armed protests that involved barricading government buildings and taking them over. And that's exactly what happened last night. They were barricading these buildings, trying to keep the government staff from leaving, trying to get in and take them over. We had some gunfire overnight. I don't really know the actual casualty numbers, but it is really shaping up to be an exact play-by-play use of the Color Revolution handbook.
Let me, I got a little summary here of what's going on. Let's see. Protesters gathered outside the Georgian parliament in Tbilisi following Prime Minister Irakli Kobaziski's announcement that Georgia was suspending EU accessions talk. Okay, so that's what it's over. It's over the suspension of EU accessions talk and rejecting the EU budgetary grants until 2028. Let's see. The president, a critic of the ruling of the Georgian Dream Party, joined the protests and emphasized the need for new elections. The protests were spurred by concerns over the October parliamentary elections, which Western governments criticized for alleged irregularities and Russian influence. Demonstrations also took place in other Georgian cities like Batumi, Gori, with participants expressing fears of an economic collapse due to the government's decisions. I guess everybody in all these countries think that EU is some sort of panacea. I don't know.
Let me just tell you that a fire hose is no joke.
Yeah. And it's cold there too. And
I was just going to say,
the weather is even worse. So
just to add a new dimension to that, yeah. Ooh, baby.
If I was one of these guys, I'd be like, "Can you guys come and arrest me and take me inside where it's warm?"
Those cops actually appear to be in a very defensive position rather than offensive. So,
yeah. Let's see. Let's just a little more here. Despite the tensions, the prime minister stated that Georgia's intention to join the EU by 2023 under conditions that align with national interest. This comes amidst deteriorating relations with the EU, particularly after Georgia passed a contentious foreign agent law leading to a U.S. decision to pause aid to the Georgian government. Interestingly enough, Georgia is a NATO partner, and I know there are ongoing efforts and different types of exercises scheduled between NATO and Georgia. It would be interesting to see if those are effective. Joe, this is literally Georgia's been on the back burner for us for a while, and it's in a tough neighborhood in that kind of, the whole GATT area. You got Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey all right in that same area, which,
I have to point something out here. Look, maybe this is coincidence. Maybe they just learned it. Maybe I learned it from watching you, Dad. But the fact that I'm seeing multiple green lasers from the back of the formation trying to blind the officers in the front, I feel personally adds credibility to Victoria Nuland having a hand in this, because that is a strategy that they hand out on the ground for various different, shall we say, secretly U.S. government-backed riots like the ones we saw in our own country for a long time.
Here's my question. Is Georgia even in Europe?
Technically, no. It's in the Caucasus, so
Yeah.
the Trans-Caucasus region.
Yeah.
I would call that more Asian than Southwest Asian than I would European.
Yeah, it makes me wonder why it's almost like NATO casting a very broad net beyond just the North Atlantic to get everybody and their brother in that organization.
Well, if we determine that the dividing line between Asia and Europe lies somewhere near the Bosphorus Strait, right? One side of the Bosphorus Strait is Asia,
Yeah,
one side is Europe. Georgia is on the far side of that.
yeah.
So
I hate to be this guy, but you know what solves this problem?
What's that?
Millimeter wave radar weapons. Done. It's instant.
yeah,
Bye.
or an LRAD or something of that nature. So
Yeah.
yes,
Um.
I'm sure that the police have LRADs there, but
Yeah. All right. Anyway, just seeing the intensity of this makes me think that we need to, kind of keep a closer eye on Georgia, and that could become something much more sticky in the near future, especially if we see any kind of potential for a repeat of the Maidan. Georgia is Europe. Okay. Maybe they don't think so. All right, let's move on. Domestic Friday, so let's talk about a domestic story in the odds and ends. Joe, you're going to tell me that we've been talking about these guys too much, but they just keep popping up in the weirdest places. New York Police Department raid uncovers rifles and ammo linked to illegal alien prison gang in Bronx. One guess
shocking.
as to who this gang might be.
Illegal alien prison gang is a really fucking weird way to say Tren de Aragua.
Isn't it though?
It just seems like a longer way to say that.
It's like it's that word with more syllables. Joe, the funny thing is that everywhere we turn in America now, we've got this new violent gang that is causing a whole lot of trouble. It's almost like somebody recruited them and brought them into the country and then spread them out. How long do you think that this gang has been kind of developing these? Either they've got their hooks into other criminal organizations and they're aligned with them and they're kind of spreading out along their existing rat lines, or somebody with a lot of wasta within, the U.S., wants these guys out there.
Well, having paid attention to a lot of this stuff from the very beginning, these gangs spread along drug distribution networks. For example, MS-13 spread up and along up to Chicago and then over along the East Coast. And M18 did the same thing coming up and along the West Coast. Tren de Aragua came up the middle, almost like there was a middleman who probably spoke Chinese that helped divvy up the protection zones for the various gangs. Where Tren de Aragua went wrong is they became public by trying to take over these apartment buildings in all these different towns. They would probably still be flying under the radar if that hadn't happened. So.
All right, so let's look into this. Tren de Aragua has been popping up everywhere we turn. So let's look at this New York City arrest. The operation resulted in the detention of 15 individuals, including 8 females, 7 males, and 1 child. Investigators revealed that several of the suspects have multiple warrants issued from jurisdictions across the country, highlighting the gang's widespread criminal network. Authorities are continuing to search the premises for additional evidence. This operation marks a significant step in the ongoing effort to dismantle the Tren de Aragua gang, a transnational criminal organization known for its involvement in human trafficking, extortion, and other violent crimes. This is a dangerous organization. We're committed to taking the necessary actions to protect the communities, one official said. And then yeah, so you've got your AR pistol, and you've got I love the scroll down just a little more, Watcher, so you can show off these ace weapons that they've got here. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, they'll put holes in you and whatnot, but still, it's no, you're not gonna scroll down. Just scroll down just a little more. I think Watcher might not be there. Yeah, be right back. 2 minutes. All right.
Oh.
Anyway, so Joe, I mean, when these gangs have short barrel rifles and things like that, are they hitting them with federal weapons charges as well as whatever local charges they're getting them on?
I don't think they are, because local police have learned a serious lesson from the last 6-8 years, and that is that you can't trust a federal prosecution to actually follow through. So they end up charging them with state or local crimes to end up getting them actual prison time. So, for example, I know several jurisdictions in Michigan, rather than charging people with the state crime, because they know how the Attorney General's office operates, they charge them with some lower level, but with real jail time attached local crime, so that it doesn't go to the state level. In order to ensure prosecution. Same thing here with the guns, because every time they turn one of these guys over to the federal level prosecutor, everything gets dropped.
Yeah, look at this. Look at that. The scope
Arsenal. Yeah.
Forward mounted on the radar.
Wait, hold on. What the fuck?
It's quite the
like
arsenal of 3 guns.
Hold on. What's going on there with that middle one? Can you say eye relief?
Well, it's when you have Venezuelan gangsters involved, I mean, what do you expect, Watcher?
Well, both of those, the top 2 they seem to have the sights, and this goes to the fact that they're Venezuelans, just proves it. Those sights on those top two rifles are placed where you would put them on an AK, because the AK you generally put it further out than you do on an AR.
That makes more sense.
And the other one is definitely a short barrel rifle. It's got the stock on it, so. Yeah, this is I just thought this was kind of interesting. We've got another image here of some of these New York NYC admits armed migrant kids from government funded Roosevelt housing is terrorizing Times Square. Let's see. We have no fingerprints on file for them. We have no photographs on them. We have no prior criminal history, he said. They swap out their IDs and no way of tracking or knowing who they are when they enter the country. The New York Post recently learned from sources that TDA gangsters have been setting up operations nationwide, including California. Listen to this. This is a pretty extensive list of states. California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Wisconsin. With human trafficking be a big part of their trade.
You know what is a sign to me that there's more to this than just a gang trying to flee a failing socialist country. Both or all really of the Mexican cartels have made efforts in the last several weeks to moderate after they realized that Kamala had lost and there was somebody coming into office that would do a crackdown on them. TDA's got worse. It's a very odd thing for a criminal gang operating in a country that doesn't belong to them to do if they don't feel that they have some kind of, I don't know, powerful government backing somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is, like we were talking while you were gone. I mean, about is this kind of a chicken or the egg kind of problem? Are they working with other gangs, or is this a gang that somebody has, worked to get them into position? Oh, Pinochet's helicopter tours for $5 says, where are the guns coming from? Are these ghost guns or ATF Fast and Furious traffic firearms to frame manufacturers? Yeah, let's be honest, with the AR-15, I mean, hell, we saw a sub $500, very competently built AR-15 from Palmetto State Armory. I mean, the AR-15s are not as expensive as they used to be. And, Joe, it's almost as everything else gets more expensive, AR-15s get cheaper. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But
I'd actually challenge that with Tren de Aragua and their heavy involvement in residential burglary rings. They're probably coming out of people's gun safes more than coming out of
right. So, when something becomes more common out there, there will be people with nefarious that get a hold of them through various ways. They could be straw purchase, but they also could be stolen, right? Joe, when everybody's got an AK, then when you rob somebody, you're just as likely to get an AR as anything else.
Yep. They're just coming from wherever, most likely residential burglaries or commercial burglaries, either way.
Steve, you say that, but did you see the picture of the ARs we just showed you? I don't know that I would test fire any of those three weapons.
Or I don't know. They might have pulled them out of guys who had bargain basement rifles and threw optics on them. I mean,
yeah.
And
you can buy optics on Amazon with no background check. Ask me how I know. There's one in my cart right now.
Nice. I think one of the other possible options here, pretty easily, is that it's almost as if they're involved in criminal activity that brings in a lot of money, and that there are people out there, straw purchasers, who are willing to go in and buy guns for people who may not be able to purchase guns legally for a small nominal fee.
Straw man, yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our next story here, guys. This, I always like to get the, this China thing is not going away. It's not new, but our friend Jim shared this with me, and I thought this was a good kind of point here. So let's play this video, and it basically gives both sides, and I think the Philippine side is a much more compelling argument.
Could you stand by as your own backyard is taken from you and watch while blatant lies try to justify it? J. Batong Bakal delivers a powerful response, exposing the truth behind the baseless claims against the Philippines, setting the record straight with logic and undeniable facts.
There's been three actions that can be interpreted in terms of the intelligence sharing, the change in laws, and the putting of missiles there. This has all happened in a relatively short period of time. In the midst of having a major change in U.S. foreign policy by Donald Trump, it's very odd. Well, missiles aren't doctrine. Passing laws against your neighbors isn't. And the fact is, the Philippines rammed the ship into and out of those same areas that are claimed by other countries, including Vietnam. So this idea that you're acting self-righteously just doesn't hold water.
It's not about acting self-righteously, really. You have to remember, we rammed that atoll, as you put it, in response to China's invasion mischief. They took it, they built shelters on it, claiming that they're fishermen's shelters. But now it's a full-blown military base. It's fully armed with missiles. It has aircraft. It has Navy and Coast Guard and militia vessels stationed on it 24/7. And they're using it to push deep into our exclusive economic zone, excluding us from access to our own fisheries, which we have been accessing for years before. With respect to our neighbors, we continue our dialogues with them, and in fact, we still have active cooperation with them. As for the laws that have been mentioned, these are laws implementing the law of the sea, to which the Philippines is a party. And the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea, is not the only ocean that we're concerned with. We also have the Cebu Sea, the Celebes Sea, and the Pacific Seaboard, as well as our own inter-island waters. So we want to lay the foundation, really, for a legal framework that not only will be responsive to domestic needs, but one that is also in accord with international law. And that's how we hope to be able to manage, especially international.
So, I mean, this is
hold on. I paused it because I wanted to make a note. Dear video editor, we didn't need the choral background music to be louder than the speaker. That is somewhat distracting. Please don't do
I
that.
think the biggest travesty in all this is that Sulu gets his own C, but not Chekhov.
Right?
That's that. I mean,
I can't stand that
yeah.
guy.
I'm just gonna say nerd. All right, push play and finish it up.
The Philippines stands firm against misinformation and aggression, upholding sovereignty with responsibility and justice. Share the truth, because our story deserves to be heard.
Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was a well put kind of summation of the Philippines' point of view on this whole thing, and they have a very legitimate point of view.
It's interesting that they call their channel there Sierra Madre, because what's the name of the ship that is aground? The Sierra Madre.
So just this is the it sounds like this is a Vietnamese guy posting this. He says it's not that the Chinese don't realize what they've done. They do. In fact, the decision to militarize the ASEAN region was a deliberate and conscious one, while Xi promised otherwise to Obama. The game is to use deceptive words and actions to keep on gaining territory, which is exactly what they're doing. It's their old salami slicing tactics that they are using once again in a new location. And they've already created multiple artificial islands and stationed military forces on those islands.
Whatever island that first one was, I think it was Bimini Atoll, where they first created a base by dumping sand and building it up. What should have happened then was a bombing raid, and that would have put an end to it. When no one in the international community reacted beyond strongly worded letters, China just was like, oh, okay, I can deal with that. And they kept on going and kept on building. And now they have these expeditionary sea bases, which is what they honestly are, in a string almost surrounding the Philippines. I mean, it's pretty makes it pretty hard for us to come in and try to intervene on the behalf of Taiwan, which is an interesting side point because the RAND group, I think, released a study last week of their wargaming, and they ran a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, I think 6 times. And in none of those instances could we get help delivered in less than 30 days.
Yeah.
So guess what would be over in 30 days, right?
Well before. Yeah.
Okay. Gentlemen, anything else on the Chinese reef activities you guys want to talk about real quick?
Yes, I have one more thing. China is asshole.
Yeah.
Fair and balanced. No, that's really it.
What
he stated it very elegantly.
You know, Joe, this is the time we haven't been doing this much lately, but now we got something to talk about at this point in the show. You got a new post on tactical-wisdom.com.
I do, but first I want to address Stoli. Green bean casserole is the only reason Thanksgiving actually still exists. I made a ridiculously large batch on Wednesday night, and I'll be eating off of it for several days. Anyway, so I wrote an article because one of the questions that we get a lot is, what's the best gun? What's the one gun every prepper needs and all this stuff? And that kind of means that you're having one tool for every problem. You need to have some other additional skills. And so what I talked about in here is that you need to also have some unarmed self-defense skills, some skills with a stick or stick-like item, like an ASP baton. And you also need some skills with a knife, because those are the escalation of force options that you can have. There's a lot of places you can't take a firearm that you can take a knife or an expandable baton. So you should have some skills with those. And ironically, I teach all of these classes. So,
one mind, any weapon, right, Joe?
That's right. And one mind, any weapon. That's the motto of the Marine Corps martial arts program. What most of my classes will be based on, and we'll be doing a whole bunch of stuff. The Marine Corps martial arts program, for those who don't know, was Krav Maga before Krav Maga was cool. anyway,
back in the day, I remember
back in the day, you learn you need to learn something, and everyone talks about, well, what's the best martial arts style? Let's be honest, it's literally anything, because that's better than what you're doing now. And a lot of guys talk a whole lot of stuff on the internet, like, oh, well, I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. Okay, when's the last time you went to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class? Well, I never have, but I know that's the best style. Okay, well, the best thing you can do is get off of the couch and go do it. And Rick, I see your comment about the cane. Hapkido, a Korean martial art, which I know a thing or two about, has an entire encyclopedia of cane fighting techniques, for the record. So anyway, it just says get out and learn something. Any type of martial art. I don't care where you take a class, but get out and do it, and then continue to train in it. You need the ability to use a knife. You need the ability to use a stick. You need the ability to use your hands. So definitely check it out. The schedule, I have been told what needs to be up by the end of next week. What I'm waiting on is a commitment from our good friends over at Shield on the date for Shield Field Days, and I can at least get the first half of the year filled out on my calendar here in the next couple of weeks, or next week or so. But what we have coming up training wise here is in January. I will be doing a 1-day knife and stick defense class on January, I think it's the 17th. That's a Friday. And on the 18th and 19th, Kay from Combat Studies Group will be doing ground rod level 2, a little more digital tradecraft and how to secure your online presence and your phone presence a little bit more. And then in February, we start the Big Daddy classes with down in North Carolina with me doing Fieldcraft, NC Scout doing Scout and Recce, all that in 1 week. You can get all those classes in. I believe that's also followed by, right after Scout and Recce, a 2-day fighting Kalashnikov class.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Which Matt and I may know a thing or two about, so you may want to be at. And then after that, our next big thing is in May, where NC Scout will be coming out here to Montana, doing an RTO course and a SIGINT course, followed by some course by me, probably community security ops, but I may throw something entirely different up there.
It's just so good to see the kind of moving forward with the planned activities up there in Montana. I know there's a lot of stuff in the works up there, and it's just kind of nice to see it all kind of, it's you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and it's just nice to see those bites are being eaten sometimes in the background and not out front, but it's very, very cool. All right.
Oh, and if you're in the Montana area, I will be at the Kalispell Gun Show next weekend. So I'll be having a booth there with T-shirts, and the T-shirt maker lady will be there. And we'll be selling T-shirts and books, and we'll have the schedule out and accepting donations for Camp Ponderosa as well.
So. All right, let's jump right into our main topic today, which is Syria, guys. Syria is just blowing up. It's like the new hotness,
The new old hotness.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's kind of like Ukraine, right? When the Ukrainian war started, I'm like, wow, it only took it 10 years, but, actually 8, but who's counting, right? But
who's counting?
So this first one, this is just kind of like gives you a general overview map. I like this map because it kind of shows you there's kind of multiple things. Now this was yesterday. This is November 27th. Right? So not yesterday, the day before yesterday. I'm hearing they're already in the center of Aleppo based on what I'm looking at on my X feed. My X feed is like filling up with all the OSINT accounts are all talking about this. So let me just kind of hit this a little bit to give a little background. The terrorist designated HTS, which is a rebranded form of Al-Qaeda-backed al-Nusra, launched that's important that the fact that this news article is saying that up front tells you that this is, it's got the right point of view. They launched a surprise offensive in Aleppo this week. It's already made a lot of progress due to the use of drones and other modern warfare tactics. I wonder where they're getting that training from. These were reportedly taught to them by Ukraine, according to reports in the run-up to the latest hostilities. Other reports include Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service warning about a false flag chemical weapons attack. Syrian, Iranian, and Russian forces, including its aerospace ones, are currently trying to push back the HTS advance. The intense fighting comes immediately after the Israeli Hezbollah ceasefire deal, which that Iranian-backed resistance group agreed to, in spite of the late Nasrallah's pledge to not do so without a ceasefire in Gaza first. It can therefore be interpreted as a Israeli victory, despite Iran hailing this. By the way, that's something we really didn't talk too much about, this ceasefire agreement. But this is literally a capitulation by Hezbollah against Israel. I guess nobody's answering the phone when all the pagers blew up in their hands. And
crazy.
And all of their bosses are dead at the bottom of big holes in the ground. It's almost like who negotiated this thing, Let's see. With the resistance objectively on the back foot in the region, it makes sense why the HTS folks decided to go on the offensive at this specific moment. Something that they'd clearly planned to do for a while. None of this would be possible without Turkey's support, since all the HTS food, clothes, and arms come from neighboring country, in spite of Ankara formally designating as a terrorist group. Erdogan's prioritization of what he believes to be his country's national interest, whether rightly or wrongly, regardless of morality, explains why he's exploiting recent events to this end. He sees an opportunity to deliver a coup de grace to Syria for ending its long-running conflict on better terms for Turkey. So the interesting thing here to me, Joe, is Erdogan's been really frothing at the mouth against Israel recently, right? Going so far as to saying that he potentially would send in, Turkish troops to fight for either in Lebanon or in Gaza, right, against Israeli troops. That being said, Erdogan is a master of kind of saying something over here and then doing something over here, right? And what I see here is Erdogan basically taking the side of against Israel's enemies. They're standing up against Iran, against Russia, against Syria, all three big powers who are supporting Hezbollah.
Well, he's got to earn that NATO paycheck at some point. But
maybe he has most.
Also, I saw that Syrian media was calling him a Zionist lackey or something like that. So
right, exactly right.
Interesting. I would certainly never characterize Erdogan as that, but they did yesterday. Which goes to Ron's point of, are they jihadists or rebels? And the true answer is yes, but it does depend on who wrote the story that they're in. In American media, they're generally those virtuous rebels resisting the Assad regime, but in truth, they're various groups of bad dudes that we funded. Why is Al-Nusra Front called Al-Nusra Front? Well, in order to receive some of the U.S. training, funding, and weapons, they had to change their name from Al-Qaeda in that area to one of the Syrian Democratic Forces or whatever we called them, right? And I don't know. It's just crazy. They all rebranded in order to take advantage of some CIA money and reinvigorated themselves.
I'm just kind of reading the story, and there's some interesting stuff here. I mean, this was kind of not wonky, policy nerd stuff, but I find it interesting. Assad is unlikely to be toppled, but Erdogan wants him to grant broad Bosnian-like autonomy to the Islamist-controlled northwestern part of the country, in which Turkey continues to exert influence. But the Syrian leader refuses to do so, since he remains adamant that his Arab republic must remain a unitary one, Likewise, he also won't grant such autonomy to the Kurds in the U.S.-occupied Northeast, which is also the country's most agriculturally and energy-rich region. Readers can learn. Let's see. So RFK Jr.
We took
revealed
the part with all the good stuff in it. Weird.
I know, right? On the topic of the U.S. occupied Northeast, RFK Jr. revealed shortly after the U.S. election that Trump is considering withdrawing these American troops. Good call. And he tried to withdraw those American troops the last time, but he was thwarted by I don't want to go into it.
By the administrative state that totally does not exist. And when they say that Turkey exerts influence over that area, that influence is exerted at the barrel of a gun. They exert that influence because they have invaded and occupy it.
Let's see.
So interestingly, a part of this that I haven't heard brought up, maybe I just missed it, but I've heard that this is kicking off because Hezbollah was the main force that was aiding the Syrians against the rebels. And now that Hezbollah has crumbled because their leadership has been bombed into the dirt for months solid, there is no more backup for the Syrian forces. And so the rebels have decided that now is their time.
Hezbollah has been there for many, many years, and they're still there under Iranian leadership. So they're Hezbollah troops with Iranian leaders. And I know that an Iranian general passed his expiration date yesterday in the Aleppo area too. So,
well, and there have also been broad strikes in Beirut and other areas of Lebanon by Israel against continued holdouts, Hezbollah holdouts. Most likely, the Quds Force or IRGC are using Hezbollah as trainers or facilitators, if you will, in order to interact directly with the Syrians. But it's mostly been the Syrians providing, forms of support to Hezbollah for the most part, because Hezbollah, while is the largest, military force within Lebanon, it's still not that huge. I mean, it's big, but it's not like massive. Let's see. So with this in mind, Turkey's strategic objectives in HTS's offensive is to coerce Damascus into granting autonomy, which that's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard anything about looking for some sort of specified autonomy by that northwestern region.
Agreed, but I think it probably I bet they think they can take that, but they don't know if they can take the rest of the country. And so why not sue for, hey, we're going to be our own place?
Well, the next point here is actually a good one too. The other strategic objective that Turkey might be pursuing right now is to get on Trump's good side by doing the U.S. a strategic favor of delivering a coup de grace to Syria that finally ends the long-running conflict and thus frees him up to fully refocus his planned pivot back to Asia. The interesting thing there is that I bet Turkey steps says, "Don't worry, we'll take care of the Kurds. Trust us." Once you leave, that's exactly what will happen to the Kurds. The only thing worse than a man for the government is a man for Turkey.
We made that same joke backstage earlier. What is Aleppo?
What is
Those
Aleppo?
three
Anyway?
words killed Gary Johnson's presidential hopes right there.
The interesting thing here is it's admittedly a far-fetched scenario, but if Syria, Iran, and Russia struggle to fend off Turkish-backed HTS latest advance, then he can't be ruled out that Israel might lend a hand to Damascus on the condition that Iran and Hezbollah are immediately expelled. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that is never going to happen.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched.
They say, Russia can't hold it back. Russia has literally like 2.5 battalions of Marines there, and that's it, right? It's not like Russia has divisions of troops there. They got less than a regiment. So
and in recent years, the Israelis and Turkish have worked very closely in places such as Libya and Azerbaijan. So, if anything, I think they're more likely to work together, even if in the background. All right.
Good one, Darth.
All right. Let's move on to the next one here. So this is armor and fighters from the Syrian National Army are now amassing north of Tal Rifat in northern Syria as they prepare to open a second front against Assad's army near Aleppo, as well as the U.S.-backed SDF position between Tal Rifat. So this is basically they're looking at potentially pushing in on the Kurdish region, which is directly north of Aleppo. If you go back to that map, I don't know if from the previous one.
Yeah, give me just a second. I can get there.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to check out live UA map.
Oh.
To see if they have a... They might have a Syrian one.
Here we go. I got it. Let me download it so we can zoom in. There you go.
Yeah, okay, so it doesn't show so this is Aleppo, the portion that's kind of under the place at the right, the light brown kind of blob region that's underneath that black box. And then due north of there is a portion that's controlled by the SDF, which is the Kurdish forces backed by the U.S. And they are resupplied against the HTS forces via rat lines through the Syrian army lines into that Kurdish region just to the north. Watcher,
did we lose
Yes.
Scott?
I think we might have. Okay. There he is. Hey, what sorry, Scott, you shorted out there for a second. What were you saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to get this live UA map thing.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Working.
Hold on.
Yeah, the Syria. This actually looks pretty good. It gives you
Syria.
pretty good.
There we have it.
All right. Yep. So, yeah, just to the north, that yellow area to the north of all this not this big yellow area. Zoom in a little bit. Zoom in on the green area. One. Yeah. Zoom. There. See that yellow area right there? That's what I was talking about. So that's where they're talking about potentially doing a counterattack towards Aleppo from the north and cutting through this area. If you look in at Aleppo, the reportage is showing that they're a lot closer now to the city center. Let's see. I've got a couple tweets I can share here. Let me. This is a tweet from Osint Descender. Syrian Arab army is reportedly fleeing positions to the north of Aleppo as rebel forces have already reached the center of the city. And so you've got the obligatory guys riding on the outside of tanks and BMPs going through the area. And then let's see, we had another one here. Yeah, so this is Syrian rebels at Aleppo International Stadium. Yeah, right there on the tanks. You can see it.
So this is just going on about their day.
I know, right?
The Middle East is the weirdest place in the world, right?
So yeah, this is definitely kind of literally breaking. This is all stuff that's happening kind of as we're. There's another one. If you go to the next link, Watcher.
Sure. But I have to comment on what Joe just said because it's amazing. Like, what do you guys think the protocol is? Like, if you're on the freeway and you see a tank free driving down the freeway. I think probably it's like a cop, right? Like, don't pass it. Just, stay well back.
Yeah. We used to have those signs that said keep back 100 feet, but wow. Crazy.
Scott, what is Aleppo? Here we've got another area inside the city of Aleppo where you've got HTS members, just kind of, the problem, Joe, is like, let's say you had an infantry company, right? Like a Syrian army infantry company, and your guys were solid, right? And you had decent positions, but the whole thing is like predicated on a wider defense. If everybody's melting around you, you literally have to pick up and go as well, because otherwise you're going to get isolated and surrounded. And I'll be honest with you,
but there is another way if you pay attention to the teachings of H. John Poole. But what happened to the entire NVA division that was inside the Citadel in Hue City?
In Hue City, right?
They vanished. They went underground, completely disappeared. Yeah. I think they used a waterway and tunnels to get out. But that's kind of the thing. A principle in urban defense is strong pointing, right? Without strong point things, people will get cut off. So you have to have
the other side of
alternate.
Other side of that is if you have mutually supporting, positions, right, and all the other positions get routed, and you're staying put, then you lose the mutual support, right? And
that's potentially what I meant by strong pointing, but yes.
The key to the whole defensive thing. So
yeah, but if you run them a little bit deeper, and H. John Poole in a couple of his books posits, rather than the traditional running it like 2 blocks deep, if you run it 4 blocks deep, you can create kind of a flowing thing where guys can get out way easier than if you just have a 2 block situation.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right. Let me go to the next one here. Yeah. So this is, the obligatory.
Notice he went right for his junk too.
Well, it's there is a a lot of repressed homosexuality.
We're going to rip the pants off of Bashar al-Assad. Wait, what?
I like his pants. I need pants. Now that he's been beheaded. Yeah.
Now this is something I can get behind.
Here's a report. This is so this is report of the SDF fighting the SNA, which is the Syrian National Army, which is the Turkish forces. 17 SNA mercenaries killed, 2 vehicles were destroyed, 2 checkpoints, and 1 base were destroyed.
The Syrian National Alliance.
Thank you. I'm sorry. And so you basically are this. I just playing this because it's basically reports of more general conflict in that area versus just that one kind of offensive thrust by HTS into Aleppo. So these guys get involved, and then what happens next? You end up having the SDF forces, 200 miles to the east start shooting, into Turkey or, around Kobiani in that area. So all of this is, it's all going to break loose, I think.
Some geography on where the Iranian general died yesterday. I just know that it was in the fighting in the region. I didn't get a specific location on where he met his demise. But that would be interesting. It would tell you where the Iranian and Hezbollah center of gravity is.
Now, this next one, Joe, I want to show you this, and I want to show you a series of images here, and I want you to tell me what you notice. Because I know you're a patch and uniform guy. So here's...
Well, that is a very interesting collection of patches on that cat.
Yeah. Go ahead.
They would seem to contradict each other, right? So he's got a Syrian flag. He's got an ISIS flag. He's got a Turkish flag. and then what appears to be a Sinclair gas station flag.
Well, the irony, and if you go back to the other picture, so what does this kid have in common with the previous picture?
I can't see what he has.
That's another one of the ISIS patches, but it's
the ISIS flag. So you're seeing a propensity for a lot of ISIS flags and things, ISIS patches.
Keep in mind too, though, that the ISIS flag is not necessarily ISIS specific. It is the Al-Shahada, right? And the only thing that makes it an ISIS flag is the one extra logo at the bottom, right? It's really just a statement of faith that's been used by a lot of different groups. Ansar al-Sharia in Libya and several others have used that same flag.
I agree with you, Joe. My point is that specifically the ISIS specific version of that has been very popular.
I mean, that's on both of those guys, yes.
Yeah, and so you got to remember though, this just tells you who HTS is, right? HTS is Al-Nusra Front. Al-Nusra Front is Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda is basically kissing cousins with ISIS.
Right. And Karen I was joking about the Sinclair thing. That's not. No one thought it was a Sinclair thing. I just think it's funny because I've now moved to an area where the Sinclair gas station is the most common one. And I see a very similar looking logo all the time.
I'd like to share a post that was shared by a distinguished member of our council who cannot be with us this morning. This comes from Old Hong Kong. The prefix for this is this message is very poorly understood by the baboon troops in DC media who just want to get through January. Here you go. It would be helpful if the media would point out that many of the, quote, rebel forces in Syria are actually Sunni al-Qaeda affiliated terrorist organizations, that Shia Hezbollah terrorists are fighting with the Russians to support the Assad regime government. The USA is supporting forces who are in battle with each other. It is a huge mess where there are very few good guys.
Yeah, I've pointed this out a few times over on my blog, is that there's really there are no good guys in this region, except maybe, if you get a little bit further west, or further east, some of the other Kurd organizations are actually freedom loving, but that region has never been known for true freedom fighters. It's one dictatorial group fighting against another, and almost always Islamist fundamentalists. You're just trading one shade for another.
What's interesting up here is you've got it. Literally, the one thing that everybody has in common in the Syrian conflict is they all fought ISIS at one point or another, which is, there's something to be said there. What's interesting is they don't really. I guess they're on here. They're calling this the Free Syrian Army. Anyway. There's probably interesting stuff here, and this is the reason why I feel like there's definitely it. The irony is, Joe, that the movement in Syria is probably the more I think about it, it's probably not related to actions within the United States, with the exception of the election of Donald Trump. It's mostly probably fueled by actors like Turkey and the Gulf Cooperation Council, people like that who want to kind of set the chessboard prior to Donald Trump's inauguration, so they're in the best position possible when they need to start working him, as to what they want him to do.
Yeah.
Baboon troops. All right. Thank you very much to our good. Actually, Ron Moeller is the one that shared that originally in the chat. So thank you, Ron.
We like Ron.
Yeah, I wish he'd come on, but he's a busy man. He's got other things to do.
For the record, Ron, I was castigated. I know you're watching. I was castigated last night at dinner for not stopping at your house anyway. The other week, our mutual friend said that I'm not taking very good care of you. So I will. I'll pop in and see you on my next trip through for sure.
I'm sorry. I've got a lot of interesting stuff in my X feed here. Anything else to talk about with Syria, guys? I think we can move on to our Mexican standoff topic here. Now, of course, this is Friday, so we always do domestic topics on Friday. So this will be our segment that we talk domestic. So what that means is we're going to wrap it up over here on YouTube and move the party entirely over to Rumble. So I'm posting the Rumble link in the chat. You guys can hit that, and by the time that the video that the watcher's getting ready to play, by the time that finishes playing, we will be over on Rumble and ready to continue forward. We won't just be talking about the Mexican stuff. We got a couple other things too, and when it comes to domestic politics, we can talk for a while on that if we really want to. So. Joe, final thoughts for the YouTube audience? Whoa, way to sign off to YouTube. Hunch the Dirty Roofer gifted 10 Future Conflict memberships. Thank you, brother. That's a mighty Thanksgiving gift. Thank you very much. Joe?
Well, since Hunch is there, I'll say this, Hunch. Someone mentioned your vodka that's sitting in my freezer, and I said that will remain until Hunch returns to finish it. So it's that simple. But I just say this: someone somewhere is turning up the dial everywhere all at once, and you should pay attention.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Watcher,
take it away.
All right, we'll see you over at Bongino's.
2, 0, 1.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone.
3, 6, 4, 6.
The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache.
8, 2, 5, 0, 9.
It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.